Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the last of the series of ERS pit stop webinars. And I think I'm completely biased, but I would definitely say this is we've definitely saved the best to last. Thank you for taking time out of your day this morning to join us. Just before we start, just a quick reminder, really. If you've got any background apps or emails active, can you just kind of minimize them, just to ensure that we don't encounter any technical issues and we don't get a laggy session, so people get the most out of the session that we've got on today. And just in terms of introductions, I did have a quick look at the registration list, and there's quite a few familiar names on that list. However, for people who don't know me, my name's Ming Wan. I'm the new business manager at ERS, and this morning I'm joined by Alan Bradbury, who's one of our senior underwriters that sits within our schemes and affinity team. And in terms of the session that we've got this morning, we're going to keep it nice and punchy, nice and sharp. It's going to last for approximately 15-20 minutes. In terms of the things that we're going to cover off, we'll just do a summary of the market as we see it. And then we'll dive into what we define as a schemes and affinity, just give some examples in terms of schemes and affinity that we've got experience in writing. We'll kind of move on from that in terms of why we think ERS would be a good fit for your existing schemes and affinities as well. And then we'll do a bit of an intro in terms of the key people within the team, a reminder on our motor breakdown proposition, and we've got some time set aside at the end just to kind of gather up any questions that people may have. You'll see on your screen that there is a chat box function, so feel free to drop in your questions during the course of today's session. Then we'll pick them up right at the end. There is going to be a couple of polls during the session as well, so please do interact with those as well. Kind of moving on to the next slide, please. So it's quite a busy slide, this one, and I just want to give everybody just a few seconds just to eyeball this and take in some of the headlines that have been occurring in the motor market over the last 12 months or so. And as you can see, there's lots of stuff going on, and we don't imagine that to slow down at any given moment in time, really. So there's been a lot of mergers and acquisitions. There's been quite a lot of market exits in the personal motor space. That could be exits in its entirety, such as the likes of RSA and Zurich, or even segments of the motor market, such as Convey coming out of high net worth. Claimed inflation, we've been talking about that for probably the best part of a couple of years, and it's still a real in demand topic, and that doesn't seem to really go away. We've seen used car prices really kind of maintain it kind of inflated levels certainly since pre-COVID, and that's despite the availability of new cars slowly but gradually coming back into play. Some of the brokers out there will have experienced some pretty kind of painful noise around suspension of new business and renewals over the last couple of weeks or so. Theft of Land Rovers, everybody's really kind of experienced that, from a broker's and policyholder's point of view, and we're not immune, to be quite fair. We've experienced some of that as well. But what we have noticed is that theft of these vehicles isn't just limited to Land Rovers. We're experiencing that across a number of premium SUVs as well. And I guess when you combine all these headlines together, it just means that we're in a really kind of challenging marketplace, and it's a really kind of difficult period of time for both brokers, policyholders, and insurers alike. And here's our first poll, I believe. So the question that we've got here for you all is, what do you see as the biggest challenges in the motor market as it stands now? And just please choose one which you think has been the biggest challenge. I'll just give everybody a few seconds to complete this, and then we'll have a look at the responses back. Okay, cool. And as you can see, I think quite an overwhelming response, really. The two things that really kind of stand out. Firstly, around instability of market. So, a lot of the stuff that we just mentioned in terms of rate increases, M&As, and insurers coming out of segments of the marketplace, followed by claimed inflation and vehicle parts and availability. So really kind of consistent, I guess, with what we've been saying, really. I'm going to hand over next to Alan now.
Hello guys, thanks Ming for the introduction and market overview. Morning everyone, I'm Alan Bradbury. Thanks for tuning in. I'm a senior underwriter. I've been with ERS for 8 years now, working in the schemes and affinities team. For those of you that know me, I'm a self-confessed petrol head. Background's always been motor insurance, working with Zurich, LV for over 35 years. So I like to think that I'm experienced enough in this segment. Plus I'm giving away my age as well. So let me start by providing you some clarity around schemes and affinities. So what are schemes and affinities? An affinity scheme would normally have characteristics where the insured may have difficulty in buying insurance via the mainstream routes. It's become more of an issue in the digital insurance world. It can often be associated to risk factors such as occupation, vehicle type, vehicle use, license type, etc. We'll look at some of those examples later on, but in a way, what we're talking about is niche, difficult to place risks. More importantly, a volume or a pool of risks brought together as an affinity. Well, there's an explanation as to why they cannot be traded via mainstream routes. Now, I recognise that these niche ingredients, we will need to create potentially bespoke policy wordings to cater for it. And we have a very good, or excellent, in fact, underwriting governance and compliance team that can actually create these bespoke wordings when required. And capture these sort of unique elements in the actual wordings themselves. So it's not a sort of one size fits all for these sort of affinities. We can also embed the breakdown cover as well into the wordings, which Ming will talk through a little later. So our preferred way of trading with these affinity schemes is generally via bordereau. We do have business traded with us currently on software houses using the reserve schemes, or pound schemes, as you might know. I'm sure you're aware of both of these and the benefits that they can bring. I'd say bordereau is probably more flexible, as it can cater for single vehicles and multi-vehicle risk, which is often required for some of these niche or affinity schemes, but also things like company name risks. But there are, of course, build costs associated with this. On the other side, there's the reserve schemes, which obviously has like EDI, transmission costs, and so on. So this brings around about some benefits and pros and cons for each one, really. So in terms of a question for you all, this is a free format question, which if you could use the chat function, please, just to ask you, which type of risks do you find hardest to place in the market? If you could open the chat box and it says whether you want to do it private or publicly, but perhaps just think of some risks that you may have had trouble placing either generally or specifically. It would help us to understand what you find hard to place, basically. I'll give you a few moments just to fill that in if you can, please. Okay, so we'll cover that off in a moment, but this slide here should help to provide some colour as to the type of schemes that we currently trade in. These are in no particular order or size, and although this slide demonstrates the diversity of the schemes and affinities portfolio, some of these are actually linked, whether it be by demographic, risk factor, or organisation. Just give you a few moments just to look at some of those variety of schemes there. I won't go through all of them, but I will voice over a few if that's okay. Let me start with foreign nationals. Now, this covers a multitude of risks. Many of you will have heard the term expats or expatriates. These could be individuals from varying backgrounds, either sort of white collar, blue collar workers, where they may have been working abroad and returned to the UK. Some individuals may simply have moved to the UK after living abroad and struggling to get motor insurance. A part of this struggle is that many aggregators or price comparison sites are not really designed to cater for these type of risks, possibly because of the data enrichment tools that are built into them. I'd say that price comparison sites are perhaps geared more towards traditional motor risks. The risk itself is usually a standard motor risk for expats, for example, but it's factors like residency, license, possibly occupation, an area that might cause problems in the mainstream market. So our approach is slightly flexible in that we will effectively tweak the products and the wordings to cater for these type of affinities. Another area we've got here is military personnel. We've got schemes to cater for UK, US and NATO forces. For example, this would include groups like the Gurkhas or US military and US air bases, even driving their left-hand drive American vehicles on UK roads. That's not something that the mainstream market can offer cater for. Data enrichment could be problematic for these as well, yet we still can cater for it with a bespoke solution. Diplomats and embassies are another example of a niche segment where we could cater for single or multiple vehicle risks. Many of you have been in London, might have seen a lot of these big black limousines or S-Class Mercedes driving around on diplomatic plates. We can insure those. We do many embassies, and in fact, it's one of our longest standing schemes. So most traditional motor policies would decline diplomatic plated vehicles. And with many of these schemes, bespoke policy wording can be worded appropriately to reflect the needs of that affinity. It might be a few little tweaks to a standard car policy wording or a whole section that relates to that affinity. Next slide, please. So here at ERS, we love a statistic, and this slide provides a number of stats that I hope gives a flavour of the schemes and affinities area. As you can see, there's a sizable amount of premium in this area. It's around 20% of the total ERS GWP, which equates to over 200,000 vehicles on cover. This has gone up by at least 10% in the last year, which in a challenging market has been quite an achievement. Premium levels have also been supported by market rate increases. Many of you are obviously aware of claims inflation. That's obviously helped sort of grow the premium and obviously make sure that our products are adequately funded. Many of our schemes have been running for years, as I mentioned. Expats been one of the longest ones, but many in excess of 20 years. And I think it's also important to note that we've got many years of underwriting experience in this segment and got a very experienced team. I myself have been in motor insurance for 35 years. A few of my colleagues have been in similar sort of amounts of time. So motor insurance is in our blood. Ming, back to you.
Thank you, Alan. So the question that we've got here is why ERS for your schemes and affinities? So just kind of building on from Alan's previous slide here, I think it's really, really clear that we've got the experience, knowledge and know-how in working closely with brokers to kind of take on either existing schemes or develop new schemes as well. And what I want to do here is just kind of pick out some of the other key reasons why we think ERS would be a really good fit for your scheme. So firstly, you know, we're the largest specialist motor insurer in the UK. Alan talked about, you know, the schemes affinity division being circa 80 million and covering approximately 200,000 vehicles. Collectively, across our 25 different products that we've got within ERS, we expect to insure around about 1 million vehicles moving into 2024. We are part of Lloyd's, and what that means is that our capacity is A-rated. So policyholders and brokers can be secure in knowing that all claims will be met in all eventualities. We've been around for a long time, nearly 80 years now, and the approach that we take is that we do things in a really consistent and considered manner, using data so that we can actually offer a proposition that's not only fit for the now, but also fit for the future. Because giving the key thing that we're really keen to do is really develop long-term partnership for our broker, particularly in this kind of scheme and affinity space. And lastly, we're rated excellent on Trustpilot. I had a quick check last night ahead of this, and it's currently sitting at 4.5 out of 5, which is a really strong rating. Moving on to the next slide, please. And this is essentially the schemes and affinity team. So it's headed up by Mitchell Malcolm and is supported by Scott, Alan, and Mark. And we've got a number of underwriters sat within our Swansea and London office. And my first impression when I saw this slide was it's a really lean team. When you consider the volume of premium that is controlled and looked after within a particular team, it's actually really lean. But actually, that's the premise of scheme affinity business, whereby it's a partnership between brokers and insurers, where you bring the expertise and we dovetail that with the know-how and knowledge and experience that we have to create something which should generally be relatively low touch compared to some other classes of business as well. So that's why we've got really experienced frontline decision makers that work really closely with yourselves on these particular opportunities. Final slide, which is around breakdown. So as Alan mentioned earlier on, we do have a really strong and compelling breakdown proposition, and we cover vehicles right away across from your standard private car through to classics and high net worth vehicles, electric vehicles, horse boxes, and motorhome. And we offer 4 different levels of cover. So roadside and recovery, total UK and Europe as well. And we've got a number of ways that we can trade as well. For the main, most of our brokers can access the breakdown proposition through our e-trade portal. So that's a full cycle proposition whereby you can quote and buy online. For more bespoke and larger opportunities, we can offer a lot of flexibility, and we'll trade this via Bordereau. And we're also happy to consider embedded motor breakdown within some of the existing schemes and affinities as well. This is a standalone product, so we don't have to cover the vehicle for you to offer the motor breakdown solution. Ideally, we'd like that to be the case, but we recognise that ERS may not be able to kind of cover certain vehicle types, so therefore we're happy to offer a standalone breakdown cover for yourself as well. So that's the kind of wrap in terms of what we wanted to share with you all this morning, and we'll just kind of go to the questions and have a quick look and see what we've got there, and we'll do our best to answer some of them. So if you haven't had the chance to type in a question, then please do take a moment to do so now, and I'll have a quick look at the question box. Let's just see what we've got here. Okay, we've just got our first question come through, and maybe one that Alan, you can pick up really. So, is there a minimum premium size that would allow it to be a schemes and affinity?
Short answer is yes. We do need, as a guide, about 250k. So 250,000 is generally the minimum amount. It sounds like a lot, but as you can expect, a scheme and affinity needs to have some sort of critical mass, but it's not set in stone. Whilst we've had or benefited from previous sort of book transfers, we're not immune to sort of reviewing lower volume books. So yeah, I mean, if it is a very niche scheme or something that is quite unique, then yeah, it's something we would consider. But there does have to be some volume there realistically. If it's like 10 policies, that's not going to be cost effective to develop bespoke solutions for, really. So yeah, and short answer is it's got to have volume. 250k is the general minimum requirement.
Okay, thank you, Alan. I've got another question here. Where are the full details of the breakdown product? How much do premiums start from? What I can do is Michelle, I can we've got your contact details. So what we can do is forward you details of both the rates, the coverage, and the cover levels as well. So you've got full transparency in terms of what that looks like. That's okay. We've got another question here. Again, probably one for you to cover off, Alan. Would you be happy to consider a brand new scheme?
Um, yes, I mean that's quite generic, but yes, the answer is depends on what it is, obviously, and whether we have a solution. We probably would have a solution. It really depends on what it is. I mean, if it's traditional private car, it's got to have some, as we mentioned, some sort of unique factor about it. It's got to have volume. It's got to be consistent. So there's got to be a connection for the scheme, whether it be a body or an affinity of some description. So yeah, I mean, there is the option there. We would review that. I mean, if there is a new scheme out there, then be interested to hear it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alan. And I can see there's one final question that I can see in the chat box, which is, would you consider a high net worth collection within schemes and affinities? Again, if you could pick that one up, Alan.
Yeah, high net worth is something which is handled with in other areas of ERS. We have a prestige team that specialise in high net worth vehicles. Pretty much anything over sort of 75,000 is like the key level. Depends on the actual nature of it. Again, if it's just high net worth vehicles, the prestige team would probably be the best option. And by all means, get in touch and we can give you some contact details to discuss that further. I think for schemes and affinities, again, it would have to have this sort of connection. They may well all be high net worth vehicles, but it would probably have to be some sort of body or scheme or some sort of link that would make it a scheme and affinities risk as opposed to a prestige one. But yeah, hope that helps.
Cool. Thank you, Alan. I can't see any more questions. However, if there are any questions that people think of post this session, then absolutely please feel free to drop myself or Alan a quick email. But again, thank you for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.